I like to think I'm not your average critic, but sometimes my methods for judging a game can be a bit contentious. Take Star Wars Battlefront, for example. I played one match of the beta and then stopped, because I wasn't having fun. At the time, I deemed it a well-presented, yet mechanically vapid first-person shooting experience, and one of my friends whose opinion I sometimes pretend to absorb took issue with that. Sounds like I was mostly right come the final product, but according to him, one match wasn't enough for a proper verdict, no matter how close to death boredom brought me. I bring this up because I feel like some viewers might take issue with me reviewing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite without having actually played it. And I can see how this could be a big hurdle in getting people to accept my opinion, but trust me, this is all gonna make sense. So here we go. I'm reviewing Infinite based on having watched the story mode cutscenes on YouTube and my impressions from the demo they released earlier this year. Strap in! The story mode was pushed heavily leading up to release because the one question the Marvel vs. Capcom series has been deferring in its decades has been, what would actually happen should the Marvel universe and this hypothetical universe with every Capcom character ever actually collide? And it's also a question that Infinite also defers. The story starts 90 days after the universe is smashed together, conveniently skipping over the need for the Marvel and Capcom characters to meet, get to know each other, develop relationships, go out to brunch, etc., etc. And everyone ends the game with about as much understanding of the other characters as they started with. Everyone is so hilariously chummy. Every time a new character hits the scene, they're immediately greeted with some character loudly proclaiming their name.
X, Captain America.
Chun-Li, Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange!
Sir Arthur.
You, Thor, are indeed mighty.
Stark. Spencer.
For you, Rocket, anything. It's Gamora!
I know who you are, Ryu.
Spider-Man.
Frank West, ladies and gentlemen.
Mike Hagar.
It's MODOK.
Dormammu.
We meet again, Firebrand.
Nemesis.
Doug Dimmadome, the owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome?
That's right, Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale
It's so awful, it's actually really funny. I mean, this could be an interesting idea to focus on for the story. Maybe the universe just believes it's one, and the discovery that it's actually a mashup is shocking to both parties. But characters seem aware that they come from two worlds sometimes. Other times they don't seem to realize it. Black Panther, for example, seems to staunchly believe he's king of Valkanda, like it's always been that way. And other times Chris Redfield will growl, "Ooh, them umbrella folks." And the story ends with an acute focus on separating the worlds out of nowhere. I feel like this could be explained or ironed out, but that would involve a team of writers, not the team of frantic mole people Capcom currently has under employ. The atrocious dialogue isn't helped much by the voice acting that ranges from just barely to 50 feet below sea level, which is weird considering how many characters have their mainstay VAs return, but still half the cast sounds like they were under severe depression at the time of recording. This kind of links me to the big crippling point of Infinite, the game's art style. It doesn't seem to have one. Characters chosen for the sort of stylized look versus those going for a more photorealistic appearance have no rhyme or reason. So we have a bootleg Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man next to a Captain America that looks like a 3D model of that Rob Liefeld picture. It looked like they were kind of going for the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 look, but they took off the cell shading, so everything just looks poor. Combine that with the dead faces found in all the cutscenes, and you have a game that has significantly more graphical power than previous entries, and still manages to be the ugliest game in its series. And these presentational woes are a shame, because the gameplay is actually still quite fun. The switch to 2v2 seemed to me like a tacit admittance that the game's roster would be puny. But they actually utilized the idea well, with team combos and getting both characters in the battle actually pretty often. Attempts have been made to make the game more accessible, with stuff like a damage system to avoid one-shot combos and an easy combo button to mash, but the classic Marvel vs. Capcom strategy of hit buttons in hopes of doing something is still satisfying. But let's go back to that thing I just glossed over, the roster size. Indeed, the roster for this game is pretty pathetic. People got mad at Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for having a smaller roster than 2, but still it took up a pair of school buses, and Infinite can barely manage one. Not to cast undue suspicion, but to go back to the art style, like I said, I couldn't help but notice how many returning characters looked exactly like their Marvel vs. Capcom 3 models without the cell shading. And I imagine that solves the Bionic Commando riddle of why he's back. But if that's the case, why not rip off even more characters? Story focus? The story is about as well knit as Freddy Krueger's hand towel, so why not make it one big blowout? The amount of Capcom newcomers to the series is pitiful. Just Jeddah and Mega Man X. And all the Marvel newbies, Captain Marvel, Gamora, and Ultron, all have very conspicuous ties to the cinematic Marvel universe. Oh, yeah, I see now. No wonder we needed to exterminate all the mutants to make this game. Say what you will about the gameplay of the Marvel vs. Capcom series, but the biggest draw for picking these games over other fighting games is the ability to realize the dreams we never realized we even had, like seeing Mike Hagar suplex the Nemesis, or getting into impromptu dual pistol shooting matches with Deadpool and Dante from the Devil May Cry series. It's a game revolving around characters, and giving the Marvel side just to fit the faces we get in the cinema, forcing the Capcom side to be smaller to boot, kills the very basis the series was founded on in the first place. And saying that we need people like Gamora over X-Men, like Wolverine, because people may not remember them, is utter bull. And this guy knows it, you know it, We all know it. Leading up to release for this game, I rewatched the reveal trailer for the original Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and that was all the story that I cared about. Infinite might have more content to swing around, but content wasn't really an issue for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, at least for me, because it had a decent roster. And it was fun making the characters fight. I didn't buy Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and some might say that me not buying the full game to review makes me a poor critic. You know I mean, among other things. But at the end of the day, this video isn't really about reviewing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. What ultimately made me not buy the game was the entirely corporate attitude about it. Oh look, went Capcom. People didn't like the new Street Fighter game lacking single-player options, so let's slap something together sharpish while focusing on the cinema side of Marvel. I swear this whole campaign just feels rushed. So instead of an epic celebration of both histories of each company, we end up with the worst sides of each. The reduced Marvel universe that seems de rigueur these days, and the cynical Capcom, oh let's just push something with name recognition out. By itself, Infinite is a decent fighter, but has poor presentation. But when you hold it up to the Marvel vs. Capcom series as a whole, it is a pathetic pretender. I didn't feel like I needed to buy the game to understand this, and if you can just look at this. They thought that this would be this. Marvel vs. Capcom is a treasured series, and you put out this.